shit. But whatever. Anyways, that's my rant about that. I guess now I'll talk about the telemetry system a little bit. I guess I'll give you a top to bottom rundown here of what's happening. You know, this is assuming I'll be able to use this video. So what we have happening is, if you've seen a couple videos I've posted describing this, we've got a couple rotary potentiometers and a pressure sensor, and the two rotary potentiometers do the throttle, the clutch, and the pressure sensor does the front brake. And where was I going with this? Right, and so that's the way it does it. And then so the microcontroller, the Arduino, reads these sensors, as we've been talking about, or I talked about in my last video anyways, once or 29.97 times a second, which is kind of stupid, because how can you read it 0.97 of a times in a second? It doesn't make any sense. But that's the way the film industry chooses to do things, or, you know, media industry. Anyways, but it reads that every 29.97 times a second, okay? And then it takes that data and saves it to an SD card. And that whole process of reading it and saving it takes about 10 milliseconds, which leaves plenty of time in between processes, or plenty of time in between loops, I suppose, loops of the program to, you know, get its shit done. So that's not a real problem. There's plenty of time there. And so that gets saved to the SD card, and then I take that SD card out once I get home. There's a text file on it with a whole bunch of numbers just separated by commas, and then I put it into a program called processing, and in processing it separates all the numbers, you know, using, I think it's called the delimiter, usually anyways, and that will, you can wait, and that will separate it based on, you know, or whatever token, I think is the word actually they use, you give it. And so I tell it it's a comma, and it separates all those, each number, whenever there's a comma, it splits it into two things. And I essentially get an array of numbers and stuff that I can work with now. And those numbers I do some math to get it to a presentable format for you. And then I record it with a program called Bandicam, and then I take that video file from Bandicam and overlay it on the video I shoot with the GoPro in Sony Vegas, and then I upload it to YouTube. So it's quite a process, but I'm hoping one day, when it ends up not being a pain in the ass, that it'll be worth it. And so that's the way that works. Problems, things that you're probably already noticing, other than my front brake squeaking for some reason, is that it's very twitchy, very sensitive, in that you'll see it twitch when it doesn't look like I'm giving any throttle input or any inputs. Or even when I am, sometimes it'll twitch between back and forth, and that's because there's not enough fidelity in the sensors to, you know, to have it choose a value. It's jumping back and forth. It's like how can I compare that for you? Take a light switch in your house, okay? And if you have it somewhere between on and off, somewhere in that range, it'll start flickering on and off because it can't decide what your input is. It doesn't know what you're trying to do. And so that's what happens to the sensor. It'll try to switch between each one because it's not sure which one you want. And so that's another problem. You'll see the flickering. Also, I need a better way of refining the data, because there are some situations that will never occur. And what I mean by that is the clutch lever, for example. In the video right now, you're probably seeing it as not being full. And that's because sometimes the clutch lever extends further than it needs to. Like, the way, you know, it all comes down to how you adjust your clutch lever. I like mine close to the hand grip. Some people like theirs. Some people like theirs all the way out, so it's up against like the there's a like a stop plate kind of thing. I can't come up with a name for it, but there's a little plate that it will rest against, so you know it doesn't rotate all the way back in. And so what the sensor's reading sometimes is that when mine slides back like that, which it'll probably show up in the video now, obviously, but when mine slides back, it tells the sensor that there's a new maximum or minimum value. I can't remember which way I have it recorded. And so that becomes the baseline for which all other values are based on. And that's why you'll see the clutch, even though it's fully engaged, it might not be at the top of the bar. And so I have to work on a better way to refine that, and that's just going to come from, you know, doing this a lot. What it's going to be, it's going to be chopping off the top, probably the top or the bottom of, or both of the data, to give me, you know, a different sort of sampling. It's not necessarily more accurate, but it's more sort of pleasing to look at because it makes more sense. It'll actually be less accurate technically, but we're not going for technically. So, but at any rate, that's why it's jumpy and why maybe the bars aren't bottoming out or topping out. But I mean, what the information you are getting is correct though, you know, relatively. Like, so when I open the throttle, I'm opening the throttle and it's the same amount shown there, you know, relative to what it's been before. So it's a bit tricky. It takes a lot of refinement, a lot of legwork on my part to get it to like an acceptable sort of point. Test some of the throttle and stuff right there. But yeah, so it's gonna take some refinement to get it really nice and so it works. And a lot of that, I mean, that's stuff I could do if I like surfed through the code or surfed through the log data that I'm getting. But that's a shit ton of work, and so I really want it to be like a two-step process. I tell it the file I want, and then I tell it to go, pretty much. And then it does the work from there, which is pretty much what it is now, but it's just not as refined as I want, and the interface could be a little cleaner, but I mean, it's not super important, I guess. But anyways, that's my telemetry system and all its woes, and I hope I'm getting something that I can show to you guys, because I'm really excited about this. And I know it doesn't sound like it, but man, I've spent so much time working on this. You've no idea. It's just been endless, the amount of hours that I've put into this. And it really, I know it doesn't look like much, just like 3, you know, little boxes in the corner over here, and it's probably pretty unimpressive, but man, I've put a lot of work into it, and you know, I'll be proud of it once it's done. And I mean, if you guys are interested in doing something like this, I'll tell you it's not that hard, but that's because I've done, you know, most of the legwork for you. If you're interested in doing this, I mean, you could do this to, yeah, I'll say you could do this to any motorcycle, the configuration I've got it now. And so, you know, if you're interested in that, the total cost for you is going to be, oh, let's see. Total cost, you're probably looking at least $150. Would be my, you know, benchmark. And then if you don't have some of the tools and stuff, If you don't have some of the soldering equipment, you'll need that, which is, you can get away with like another $30 probably for that. But you'll probably screw up. So I would say, we'll call it $200. And you could have this working the way it is. All the programs and stuff that I'm using, apart from Sony Vegas, of course, are free. And that's not a problem. In the code, I'll give you the code if you ever get to that point. But the difficult part will be, getting the sensors mounted on your motorcycles, the tricky part. So, oh, look like a jackass real quick. Anyways, where was I going? So yeah, if you're ever interested in doing this, I'll give you the tools you need. Not the tools, but the programs and stuff, all that jazz. I can answer questions and stuff, but it's going to be a long process for you. I mean, I had experience of coding and all that kind of stuff before I embarked on this, and it still took me months to do. So, I mean, it's not going to be easy, but if it's worth it, if you do like a lot of track days maybe, and you're interested in and you want some kind of telemetry system, but you don't want to pay $500 for it or $1,000, I can't remember. I never even bothered looking. I looked at them for my car once, and they were obnoxiously expensive. So, but they offer a lot of features that mine doesn't. So I mean, it is a trade-off, but it really just depends on what you're looking for. I really just wanted what I have right here, so that's what I ended up with. But